Pablo, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Kerry, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? JP, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? Evening. Joe, good to see you as well. How you doing? How's your day today? It was busy, very busy. Evening, Miles of CMF. How's your day today? Joe was great. I finally beat Pablo on being first and alive. I'd still say Pablo beat you because Pablo's first, if I'm not mistaken, on the line. But I think it's just because some sort of delay sometimes. I guess I did. It's okay. Hey, brother Miles, coming to us. Good to see you as well. How you doing? Even JP beat me. No, it's Pablo, you, and then JP, and then Joe. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Free and Feather. Good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Okay, let me pin the live as well. Pin to your profile. Pin. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, we're in. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Good to see you as well. Free and Feather. How you doing? How's things, brother? Okay. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Bull XRP. Good to see you as well. How you doing? There's a few things that's happened around the world, which we're going to be talking about on tonight's live. A few crucial things are happening, to be fairly honest. Now, welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, the CMF stands for Crypto Mouse Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. London time onwards, for the most recent news regarding cryptocurrency, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much vital information for you to know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. By the looks of it, we're getting actually very close inside the United Kingdom, and I'll essentially reference to what I mean by that a little bit later on the live. Also, the disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. So, welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, and if you're regular, let's go CMF. By the way, honestly, thank you so much to everybody who has already liked and retweeted this live, essentially, if you're watching this on XCF members. And thanks so much to everyone who's also liked this live if you're watching this on YouTube. And also a special thank you to everyone who has also put a comment outside the live, because that really does help with the algorithm. If you haven't done that, CMF members, take 5 seconds to smash those like buttons and smash those retweet buttons as well. Now, let's see where we're at inside the comment section before we go through the first news on tonight's live. And I'll explain to you why the markets have tumbled ever so slightly and what's going to be coming moving ahead. And also what's happening in terms of international bases around the world, in terms of the digital world. Let's see where we're at inside the comment section first. We were at here. Pablo, you better watch it. I'm coming for your spot. Let's go, okay. Hi, Miles. Hope you're all well, and all CMF. Everyone, please share the Miles. He's best helping humanity. Thank you so much. One love for the kind words. Hey up, Miles and CMF. Woodhouse, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? How's things, Woodhouse? Good evening, Miles and CMF. Orphan, good to see you as well. How you doing? I will do my routine and like and repost for you, Miles, tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for that, Woodhouse. I gotta go on holiday in Turkey. I will listen when I can. Take care. God bless. One love, no problem. Have a safe vacation. Hi, Miles. Good to see you. Hope you had a nice sleep. Welcome to this live for Fax News. Let's go, Carl. Good to see you as well. How you doing? Hi, Miles and CMF. George, good to see you as well. How you doing? Did you watch the Tuesday broadcast today? British state launched dystopian society. I didn't watch the Tuesday broadcast. If I'm not mistaken, Tuesday is also Persian as well. But I haven't seen his broadcast in any sort of a way. But it is something I said that's going to be happening 3 years ago. I told everybody that when I used to do these live shows, and it was called the CMF also, but I used to do them on TikTok, essentially live. And for anybody that's new, that's watching right now for the first time ever, I used to do these live shows on TikTok. And I said to everyone 3 years ago, if you want to see where your country is headed, just look at China. With China's CBDC, social credit systems, and digital identities, and everything else that comes with it. And at that time, China was the only country extremely advanced in its digital world, this dystopian digital world, essentially. And I said every country is en route to become the next China in terms of censorship and everything else. And one by one, every country has essentially folded and is slowly becoming this, restrictive censorship, digital ID world with CBDCs. Let's see where else we're at inside the comment section. Hi, Miles. Hi, Miles of CMF. George, good to see you. How you doing? UK government getting closer to digital IDs. Yes, facts. Hi, Miles. Why always dipping? Johnny, Don't worry, it's part of the game. Hello, Miles and family. Scott, good to see you. How you doing, Scott? Let's go. So, this is what's been happening today, essentially why the market suddenly tumbled ever so slightly. And here's what happened. The crypto turbulence shakes out market confidence. On the day marked the upheaval essentially inside the cryptocurrency realm, leading digital currencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum witnessed considerable losses. This is downturn has sparked worry among stakeholders and essentially instigated widespread liquidations also in derivative contracts. It wasn't just the stock market that essentially took a blow today. Crypto also took a blow today, and so did the derivatives market space. The inherent instability of these crypto assets continue to challenge both traders and investors globally, casting doubt over market stability and investor sentiments. In early market activities, Bitcoin dropped sharply below $109,000, its lowest in nearly months. Now, similar struggles beat essentially Ethereum, which fell by 8%, closing in an essentially price near $3,800 at the time of this article, erasing gains made since start of August. Ethereum's essentially decline is now at 22% from the last month's high. Solana also followed in suit with an 8% essentially decrease, following essentially falling under $200 from over $250 just weeks prior. These declines reflect a broader market loss captured in the 6% dip on the essentially CoinDesk 20 index. The dip in crypto values have essentially had a ripple effect on the derivatives trading platforms as well, prompting essentially widespread liquidations on leveraged positions. According to CoinGlass, more than $1.1 billion in these positions were dissolved. Ether alone faced liquidations essentially exceeding $400 million, with Bitcoin losing $262 million in long stakes. Crypto-related essentially equities did not escape unscathed either, experiencing similar declines. Michael Saylor's essentially strategy MSTR nosedived by much as 10%, hitting essentially a 5-month low and erasing their yearly gains, now reflecting essentially a slight year-to-date negative return. Bitcoin's plunge has brought it closer to earlier lows from late August and early September, where it essentially found brief stability above $107,000. Present market order book liquidity clusters indicate a potential for some buying essentially resistance against persistent essentially selling pressures. Analysis essentially from market specialists offers some hope, as Streak essentially mentioned. The current liquidity clusters might absorb the ongoing selling, hinting at a guarded optimism for a modest bounce back. While declines have essentially been stark, optimism still exists. Among traders, anticipating rebounds and market corrections often open doors to levels essentially of market movements. A crypto investment advisor commented such views highlight ongoing dialogues in the crypto investment landscape and the main reason of why the markets tumbled ever so slightly. And it has multiple reasons, but one of them is this. The Federal Reserve Board member, Christopher J. Waller, stated that the Fed's reserve levels could shrink to $2.6 trillion, emphasizing its importance for monetary policies. Liquidity conditions and interest rates are likely affected, influencing essentially banks and financial markets, also including cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum, with potential for also essentially market volatility has increased right now. Federal Reserve Board member Christopher essentially outlined possible plans for reducing the Fed's reserve to around $2.6 trillion. This development aligns with the ongoing quantum essentially tightening efforts aimed at adjusting essentially the balance sheets and managing liquidity levels within the market space. Waller's comments resonate with the Fed's broader strategy on asset management, and crypto markets may experience volatility because of this announcement, especially as essentially risk assets react to decreased liquidity. Crypto assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum have shown increased fluctuations during past quantum tightening cycles, and the Fed's communication is a key driver of sentiment influencing both traditional and digital assets. That is why across the board, stock market, derivatives, crypto, every single one of them tumbled downwards. Research teams indicate that liquidity reductions may impact assets volatility further. Historical trends essentially from prior Fed actions show that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies tend to react to liquidity shifts, and now we're going to have a reduction in liquidity from the announcement the Fed made, suggesting that essentially potential price volatility ahead. Regulatory contexts and technological responses could see adjustments aligned with monetary developments. So, it almost seems like that essentially the Fed, straight after making that, 0.25 essentially rate cut, which the market was expecting a lot more rate cut to come out of them. And then the Fed said, well, process the rate cut somewhere down the line. And now the Fed also coming out and saying there's going to be a reduction essentially in terms of liquidity. That was essentially what helped them. That was essentially what made the market tumble. Stock market, crypto market, and derivatives. Is this going to have a long-lasting effect of months of the market being on the downtrend? No. Max 20, essentially minimum 24 hours, max 48 hours, the market will be impacted and the market will go back to normal. Pretty much by next week, the market should be back to normal, to be fairly honest. Now, moving on to, because let's not all forget the bigger picture. The bigger picture is all the ETFs, the regulations, and the world actually turning digital with all the liquidity pouring into in terms of tokenizations. Just a couple of days ago, we talked about tokenization of BlackRock and essentially Wisdom Tree and Franklin Templeton and so on. None of that has went away. It's in fact going to be expanding as we move forward. Those are key areas everybody should be fixated on, not the short-term volatility. Because in short-term volatility, the house wins. Long-term, you win. Now, SharpLink is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. SharpLink essentially has decided to tokenize the SBET stock on Ethereum's blockchain. SharpLink Gaming, essentially Inc., has announced today that it will be tokenizing its common stock SBET on the Ethereum blockchain. I don't know if that's a great choice for them, but they're going ahead with it anyways. Partnering with essentially Superstate, SharpLink will be the first public company to issue equity directly on Ethereum. This landmark decision aims to utilize blockchain technology in creating shareholder value, enhancing market efficiency. SharpLink, essentially a major corporate Ethereum holder, finds that this move aligns with its long-term essentially commitments to integrate blockchain into corporate finance. According to the SEC filing, the company intends to appoint the Superstate as its digital transfer agent for this initiative. The full SEC filing details can be assessed here. Now, the SharpLink's essentially treasury includes over 838,000 Ethereum so far on their treasury, supplemented by more than 3,000, essentially 815 Ethereum through staking rewards since mid-2025. This substantial treasury provides a strong base for its tokenization strategy, and Superstate, known for its establishment essentially regulated tokenization infrastructure, facilitates this process through its opening bell performance. Now, I just want to point one thing out. This is not only good for Ethereum, to be fairly honest, it is good for in general for the market space. The more we have, as I said, public companies coming out and saying they want to tokenize their assets or they want to create a crypto portfolio for themselves, the more credibility adds towards the crypto space in general. But moving on from that to Europe. Before we talk about Europe, let's go start a conversation first, because 9 banks have just done something in Europe, and we're going to talk about what they exactly did. But let's go start a conversation before we talk about that. Let's see where we were at. We were at here. Digital IDs are not too worrying for me at the moment. I'll tell you why you should be worried a little bit later on. But if you listened to me a long time ago, which everybody did inside of CMF, you're all pretty much well off. Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you all morning. How you doing? Hey there, Miles. Good night. D, good to see you. How you doing? Miles, I was wondering what happened to the CMF Telegram group. Was I kicked out because of the Charlie Kirk stuff I shared, maybe? Not that I'm aware of. I'll look into why that happened. I'll look into it after the live. Not that I'm aware of. Miles, it sounds like, because I'm in support of Charlie Kirk, so I don't know what you shared against Charlie Kirk or for Charlie Kirk, but I've always essentially backed Charlie Kirk, to be fairly honest. Miles, it sounds like XRP could be the official crypto of the European Union. Seems like it. Good evening, Miles and CMF. How you doing? Callie, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Scott, let's go. Let's go. Evening, Miles and family. Susie, good to see you as well. How you doing? So, 9 European banks launch a euro stablecoin. 9 European banks join forces to launch a MiCA-compliant euro stablecoin. Today, essentially the announcement came. Dedicated to crypto design on-chain, the ecosystem essentially includes ING Bank, Banker Seller, KBC Bank, Deutsche, essentially Deckers Bank, Decker Bank, Union Credit, SEB, Caxi Bank, and Rafson Bank International. First issuance targets second half of 2026. This token does not just want to exist, it aims to become the European standard for digital payments. Despite a recent major crypto security breach, banks promise instant settlements, reduced costs, 24/7 availability and programmability, revolutionizing global finance and supply chains. This does sound like it's the XRP ledger to me, to be fairly honest. I mean, when a bank says, or 9 banks in general say, they're going to be doing essentially, going digital, reduce costs, 24/7 availability and programmability, revolutionizing global finance and supply chains, instant settlements. This is like essentially quoting what the XRP ledger is for. Essentially, the stake is tricky. The dollar massively dominates essentially the global stablecoin market today. Europe is creating a regulated euro payment rails, securing infrastructure and capturing crypto flows also, because a standard only exists if all actors share it. The banks are paving the way and inviting other institutions to join the table. Essentially, the goal is clear: create a European alternative, a true infrastructure building block, robust and not just a marketing gadget, broadly adopted essentially by the industry. Rather than patching together solutions, the banks established a dedicated company in the Netherlands. It will apply for a crypto electronic money institution license under the Dutch supervision, anchoring the MICA token. This is essentially the right playground for the known rules, clarified essentially in terms of buyback rights and other safeguard measures. On timing, the milestone is set with the first issuance in the second half of 2026. This pace essentially allows assembling the crypto stack, governance, reserve, subscription, redemption, compliance, integrations, and custodians, essentially, and PSPs. Each bank will provide value-added components, crypto wallets, custody, corporate services, escrows, essentially conditional payments, on-chain treasury. The interest is to bring programmability into the heart of the corporate treasury systems for crypto flows without acceptance and friction or regulatory headaches. So Europe, essentially, stablecoin represents only a fraction of roughly the $300 billion global capitalization market so far, because the dollars does lead the market: USDT, USDC, RRUSD, PYUSD, and you get the picture. Now, however, it will arrive in context where essentially the European Central Bank remains vigilant regarding monetary and financial stability risk related to stablecoins. Simply put, the design must be flawless. Facts. I said this a long time ago. It takes a lot of time for a payment system, essentially for the XRP ledger, to essentially take over the world, because they have to be 1 billion% sure before they essentially launch it, roll it out. To start, this timeline is not isolated. Indeed, this week, Societe Generale Forge chose bullish Europe as the first listing venue for its stablecoin, dominated essentially in the USD CV dollars. The dollar counterpart of its euro, essentially CV, launched in 2023. Meanwhile, the European ecosystem essentially structuring from top, with banking essentially issuers laying their rails under MICA and testing liquidity on regulated platforms. A clean bridge is emerging between traditional finance and decentralized finance right now. If liquidity flows, we will see DVP settlements of tokenized securities, supplier payments program to the block, and treasuries and arbitraging essentially on T+0 and B2B cryptocurrencies, using essentially the finally emerging from the laboratories. Yes, the road is long, but the course is clear, and this time it is the banks, the industries themselves, that are taking action. You know what I love about this the most? That each bank, as I said a while ago as well, it's actually the same thing that Hong Kong said as well. We don't need every single bank and every single institution in the world coming out and creating their own stablecoins, because that would just create confusion. So I like the idea of 9 banks so far in Europe all coming together collectively for one European stablecoin. That makes a lot more sense than 9 individual banks with 9 individual stablecoins, because that just creates confusion. Because you don't need 50 different types of versions of the European stablecoin. The same way you don't need 50 different types of versions of the dollar in terms of a digital payment. So I like that idea. And it also does show you how close we are to that digital world now. Now, moving on from that particular news to this. Dutch political party proposes a national Bitcoin reserve. The Forum for Democracy in the Netherlands proposed establishing a national Bitcoin reserve, a groundbreaking idea yet to gain official government support as of September 2025. So far, nobody's supporting it in the Netherlands for a Bitcoin reserve. I think they're probably waiting to see what the US's next steps are going to be. The proposal, if reviewed, could influence Bitcoin's role in the state reserve, signal a potential shift in Dutch and global financial strategies. The Dutch political landscape witnessed a stir as the Forum for Democracy proposed a national Bitcoin reserve. This move aims to position the Netherlands among the first developed nations, essentially adding Bitcoin to its state reserve. Despite the proposal, no formal government policy has been intact yet. Proposed essentially by the minority party, the Forum for Democracy, the idea has triggered discussions across various essentially platforms, including crypto forums and among industry influencers inside the crypto space. As it stands out, no official support so far from leading essentially government figures has materialized. The immediate effects are mostly limited to intensified public discourse. The proposal, if essentially articulated, could set a precedent for other European countries maybe to set up their own essentially Bitcoin reserve. Now, we know for a fact that Romania, if I'm not mistaken, or Bulgaria once did decide to create a Bitcoin, portfolio, Bitcoin reserve, which was instantly shut down by the European Central Bank. Financially and politically, the proposal represents potentially significant changes. It symbolizes a radical step in integrating cryptocurrencies and the national strategies, highlighting the growing essentially confidence towards cryptocurrencies, especially in this case in the Netherlands. If adopted, essentially the implications for the financial landscape could be substantial, although essentially the governmental adaptation essentially appears tentative. Now, the analysts are describing this proposal as potentially forward-thinking, reflecting a possible trajectory towards innovation leadership and inflation hedging. The FVD proposal is forward-thinking, emphasizing the potential for innovation, leadership, and essentially inflation hedging if adopted, drawing on historical trends like nations like, for example, El Salvador, who also decided to become a Bitcoin country. So Netherlands thinks about doing essentially the same thing El Salvador did, but on a much more larger scale because they are a part of the EU. If they do it, there's a more high likely chance that the rest of the countries in the EU will follow in suit. Is the European Central Bank going to let them do it? It's a different question on that matter. Most likely, no. Because if the European Central Bank didn't let Bulgaria create essentially a Bitcoin reserve, I'm very doubtful they're going to be letting the Netherlands create essentially a Bitcoin reserve. Because if they're going to let the Bulgarians do it, then they're going to let the Netherlands do it. If they don't let the Bulgarians do it, then they're not going to let the Netherlands do it either. Now, moving on from that to Ripple. Now, we don't tend to do Ripple news so earlier on into the live, but we have a few, and I thought, let me just mix them about inside essentially the news I'm going to be sharing with you. So, Ripple's chief legal officer makes statements addressing the future of all cryptocurrencies. Big deal. Ripple's chief legal officer, Stuart, said that cryptocurrency industries does not need a Dodd-Frank-like regulation. Now, I'll explain to you what that means. As lawmakers in Washington work on new rules for digital assets, Stuart argued that regulations should be proactive rather than reacting to a crisis. In other words, if you rush the regulations, it could become too restrictive. If you don't move fast enough, then you'll be falling behind in innovation. There must be a balance in between of actually creating the correct regulations, not rushing it, but not also taking too much time. Speaking at a conference essentially organized by the Pasora essentially Center for Financial Markets and Policies at Georgetown University, Stuart said Dodd-Frank was intact in response to a crisis. Cryptocurrency regulations must be proactive, not created because of a crisis. The Dodd-Frank Act, for example, that passed in 2010, tightened oversight of the financial sector in response to what happened back in 2008 in terms of the global financial crisis. Establishing institutions such as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Financial Stability Oversight Council. Both the US House and the Representatives and the Senate are working right now on comprehensive legislations to regulate the crypto industry. The House passed a bill essentially last summer that defined the responsibilities of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, imposed obligations on digital asset companies to separate essentially client assets from company funds and impose transparency requirements on individual investors. The Senate Banking Committee's version, however, aims to clarify which digital assets are not considered securities by introducing the concept of essentially of the unlucky assets. Now, market structure is a complex issue. I'm all for these smart market I'm all for these smart market structure legislations, but we don't need a Dodd-Frank for cryptocurrencies at this stage, said Stewart, calling for a balanced approach to regulating the crypto sector. I agree 100% with what Stewart has said. If you essentially rush a crypto legislations, then it could be a two-part law, which means we have to get the first round of votings, and somewhere down the line we'll get the second round of votings. If we also take too much time, then essentially we're going to fall behind in terms of innovation. And if you fall behind too far, the world technically needs liquidity right now because a lot of countries are running short on that. So it's that balancing between where we don't go back and forward, and whatever is on the table, signed, done deal. There's no two-part or three-part to that legislation. Now, City is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. And this is why it's so important. Just want to point this out. This is why it's so important to not focus on short-term volatility, because in the long term, you're all winners. Short term, you're going to be seeing the market go all over the place. In the long term, your future is pretty much brilliant ahead of you. Just to explain to you what I mean by that, Citi predicts stablecoin market to reach $4 trillion by 2030. That's just telling you the amount of liquidity estimated to be entering towards the market space. Now, to be fairly honest, we have had bigger estimates as well, around $5 trillion, $6 trillion, $7 trillion. Citi's Future Finance thinks that Tank Reserve essentially is projected stablecoin market valuation to 3.7 to 4 trillion by 2030, driven by increased regulatory clarity and institutional involvements. Experts say this projection underscores the importance of stablecoins in payments, financial integration, and the broader economic landscape, potentially affecting major cryptocurrencies. The stablecoin market is poised for significant growth, reaching an estimated $4 trillion by 2030, is what Citi's coming out with today, according to Citi's latest reports. Citi's projection is influenced by insights from industry leaders, pointing to stablecoins expanding beyond crypto trading and integrating into mainstream financial systems. This is big coming from Citi. Citi's projection estimates the stablecoin market could reach $4 trillion by 2030. This analysis is informed by the opinions of key industry gains. The Citi forecast indicates potential growth driven by institutional integration and regulatory shifts. Stablecoins' role in financial systems is anticipated to expand. Rotary Chose, the global head of Future of Finance, Citi Institute, remarked and said, "We're looking at the integration of stablecoins into what you call the mainstream economy. Stablecoins allow people all over the world to hold dollars or euros in an easy and a much more low-cost way." Michael notes essentially significant stablecoin transactions growth at Fireblocks platform. This could lead to increased integration in global financial systems. The forecast highlights potential benefits essentially for Ethereum and other blockchains that stablecoins are present on. Analysis expects possible regulatory support to boost stablecoin impacts on financial structures. Michael, the CEO of Fireblock, noted, "Payment companies represent 11% of all of our clients, but 16% of the overall stablecoin transactions, with over 30% growth of the Q&Q in volumes. It is likely that essentially this growth will continue. They see that essentially will represent 50% of the stablecoin volume within 12 months. Historical essentially market growth shows that stablecoins transitioning beyond trading right now. Past trends suggest that a continued increase in adoption for diverse financial applications. Rotary Chose emphasizes the need essentially for regulatory clarity to drive substantial market expansion. And historical AI market growth like ChatGPT, he says, serves a parallel for potential stablecoin adoption. With regulatory support, stablecoin issuers could become one of the top US Treasury holders, surpassing major sovereign nations by 2030. Further validating integration into the existing financial system, according to Citi's newest reports that came out today. This is essentially why you should never be focused on short-term volatility. Yes, the markets have been a little bit volatile, but looking ahead, the markets are going to be expanding. Liquidity is going to be pouring inside the market space. Even though the Fed, for example, today is saying reduction of liquidity. Short-term. Long-term, and it's just words, to be fairly honest, and the Fed knows that their words carry implications in the market space. Just by saying good morning, the stock market could drop when it comes from essentially Jerome Powell. But to be fairly honest, you shouldn't be looking at the essentially short-term market space. You should be looking essentially in terms of long-term, because you know where the future is headed. You have reports coming out telling you in terms of estimates of the liquidity size pouring inside the market space. And it's not 2030, $4 trillion. It's gradual to $4 trillion, to $5 trillion, to $6 trillion, and so on. Now, 21 shares is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. 21 shares enters Brazil with 6 crypto BDRs. Before we talk about that, let's consider the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, as always, which means if you do have any questions or comments, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So let's see where we're at in the comment section. Let's see where we were at. We were at, I think, where were we? We were... We were here. Evening, Miles and family. Susie, good to see you. How you doing, Scott? Let's go. It's great to read and all see stuff online that Miles shared with us 2 or 3 years ago. I'm already prepared. Let's go. Facts. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Honestly, right now, you know, if you want to be prepared for a CBDC world, for a digital ID Britain, then you have to be tuning into the CMF lives, because what I told people 3 years ago has pretty much saved them going forward now. Good evening, Miles and family. Manny, let's go. Share the live and hit the like button. Let's go. Facts, Scott. D says, okay, thanks. I shared videos of a stage event. Not very popular because people believe he is all that. I can understand and the knee-jerk reaction. But Jesus was very clear. We should expose the liars. Okay, D. And what up, Miles and CMF? Hope all is well. Ray, good to see you, brother. How you doing? Miles, looks like lately we have many news that affects the market for 24 to 48 hours. Yeah, because the house is trying to win. The reason why we have essentially news coming out that affects the market space 24 to 48 hours, and then suddenly we have 1 day of green and then 2-3 days of red, is because the house needs to win in between. Because where we're heading right now in terms of regulations and expansion of the market space is going to be a lot of long positions. So the casino needs to win quite a lot. The house needs to win quite a lot before it can pay out. And it has to pay out at one point. Otherwise, people won't return back. By the house, I mean the exchanges, essentially, as well. Hello, Commander. How are you today? I'm doing great, Scott. Good to see you. How are you doing? Even Miles and CMF, I'm sorry I'm late. Jason, no problem. Good to see how you're doing. Form for Democrats is the only party with brains, but they are destroyed by the media for years. FVD might get some more votes this election, but for other right-wing parties, PVV is super socialist. I love how we promote our CMF group daily online through our shared posts and supports for one another, unmatched anywhere online. Let's go, Scott. Facts. Honestly, thank you so much to everybody from the CMF who likes and reposts not just the lives that I do, but also the posts that I do on X as well. Thank you so much to everyone from the CMF. Honestly, I love how we promote CMF. Let's go, Scott. The FVD is anti-EU. They are the only party that wants to next. Also, regarding the EU, apparently they're going to be voting out Ursula. If they are able to vote out Ursula, a lot of people are excited and happy about Ursula leaving. She is a horrendous person, to be fairly honest, in terms of policies that she's been creating, you know, for the longest time. And but people are assuming somebody better is going to replace her. I'm sorry to say to everyone that might think you essentially replacing Ursula, somebody better is in the pipeworks, the pipeline, in other words. There isn't. I'll be honest. There's no politician right now on planet Earth that I can say hand on heart is the best candidate to run the world. There's not a single one. Except one exception, Trump. And I've said this before, there are some things that I don't agree with Trump, but I agree with what he's done for America. I agree for essentially what he's achieved so far for the market space, for the crypto market space, open up innovation. So there's a lot of things I do agree with Trump. A lot of things I agree with Trump. There's a few things that I don't agree, but everybody has that. But there's a lot of things I agree with Trump, and I've always said that. Just want to point this out honestly. There is not a person, any politician right now that hand on heart that I could say is a great politician to lead any country. Nobody. Every prime minister and president so far that's been running the show, horrendous. Every country is in massive debt. Every country has had spikes in crime. Some countries haven't had spikes in crime, and you might refer to them to the Middle Eastern countries, for example, that some of them might have not had spikes in crime. But you know why they haven't had spikes in crime. But honestly, every president, every prime minister, nobody's done a good job on fixing this world, repairing this world, providing for this world. None of them. Not a single one. Except the exception of Trump, because he's not a politician, he's a businessman. Very different. Again, as I said, there are a few things, but the majority I agree with him. So regarding replacing Jerusalem, nobody's better is going to replace her, to be fairly honest. There's nobody that's going to be replacing her. You could go, yes, that person is great. It is big trap to be a member of the EU. I agree. Good evening, Miles, the CMF group. How are you doing today, boss? Good to see you as well, Carlos. How you doing? Miles, when can sell some coins before pump? I buy back. Not now. I mean, the market's extremely volatile. Again, not financial advice at all, but the markets are all over the place right now. Hi, Miles, CMF, short-term wise. Golden Dragon, good to see you as well. How you doing? Or not much time. Not much time. Prepare. How do you prepare for an ID? It's mandatory. What have I missed? Regarding preparing for that, I'll explain a little bit later on tonight's live. 5,000 XRP, 15K locked in XRP ledger, DeFi pool could easily make you a millionaire with no risk over a 10-year period. Let's go. In Germany, they say Ursula von der Leyen, which means Ursula of the someone should save Europe, maybe Miles or Trump. Let's go, Ray. I like that idea. The EU has to go. It's the communist thing. That's why crypto won't save you there either. Crypto/CBDCs are not the problem, but the system where it's implemented. The EU is a communist. Believe it or not, it's in the agreements. Yeah. Now, 21 shares. Enters Brazil with 6 crypto BDRs. Now we're going to talk about digital IDs a little bit later on tonight's live. There's things that people should know about. Swiss crypto asset manager, 21 shares, has launched 6 new crypto-linked Brazilian depository receipts, BDRs in other words, in Brazil, making its official entry into one of Latin America's fastest growing digital asset market spaces. The listings went live, essentially, today at the opening of the B3, Brazil's main stock exchange. The products of the essentially of BDRs, a European listed exchange traded product, ETPs, a category that essentially includes ETFs and other essentially exchange traded vehicles. The launch expands Brazil's crypto ETF landscape, which essentially already features more than 20 listed funds. According to the company, the decision follows 3 years of market research, and now is the right time, they said Bruno, essentially the senior associate at 21 shares for essentially Iberia and Latin America. He also went on to say, we see growing demand for crypto exposures from both retail and institutional investors. The 2023 regulation opened additional doors. 21 shares manages over $11 billion in assets and holds roughly 30% of the European crypto ETP markets. Its product suite includes more than 50 offerings across Europe, the US and Australia, including the ARK 21 shares Bitcoin ETF, well, the first essentially spot BTC ETFs approved in the US, launched also in partnership with Cathie Woods and ARK Invest. In Brazil, 21 shares will partner with BTG and Patron Virtue, who will serve as the market makers for 6 BDRs. The company now has a 6-person team based locally. The launch comes aimed at a broader rise in digital asset exposures among Brazilian investors right now. A Locomotive essentially Institute survey in April showed that 42% of investors already hold crypto in essentially Latin America or in Brazil, matching the shares of those invested in mutual funds. A separate essentially poll estimated that at least 25 million Brazilians have exposure to digital assets. While Brazil's essentially crypto ETF market is already competitive, the entry of 21 shares alongside major banking and trading partners may also signal the beginning of a deeper institutional essentially engagement in local crypto capital markets. So, 21 shares expanding the crypto market space in Latin America, or in this case in Brazil. Brilliant to watch that happen. As I said, the idea of cryptocurrencies embedded inside the traditional financial sector or inside the stock market is always great to see. Now, senators demand ethics review of Trump's affiliated crypto firms, the UAE investments, and AI export deals. And who's leading this right now? Senator Elizabeth Warren and a few other Democratic senators have come forward and said, we want to open up an investigation into the president of the United States, Donald Trump, for his affiliation with a crypto project, for his affiliation with the investment firms in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and for the affiliation in AI. Democratic Senators Elizabeth Warren and essentially Elisa urged the Inspectors General of Commerce and State Departments to investigate possible ethics violations tied to World Liberty Financial, a crypto company linked to Donald Trump. Their request centers a $2 billion investment from the state-backed Emirati firm and raises questions about whether U.S. officials use their position for private benefits. The letter outlines concerns over two deals, essentially announced back in May. One involved U.S. approval of the United Arab Emirates to import American-designed artificial intelligence chips. The other involved the UAE's $2 billion essentially commitment to the World Liberty Financial. So let me get this straight. Elizabeth Warren is angry because Donald Trump was able to get the United Arab Emirates to buy an equivalent of $2 billion of American chips, computer chips, which is brilliant for the American essentially developers in that sense. And she's angry at that, and also angry at the UAE for investing $2 billion into Trump's essentially affiliated crypto project. He did bring $2 billion into the country, which is more than what Elizabeth Warren has ever done in her lifetime. She hasn't brought $100 to the American public. Now, according to the senators, the transactions essentially intersect is in ways that could compromise U.S. national security, given the UAE's ties to China. Everybody has ties to China. Even the U.S. has ties to China. Although no direct quid pro essentially Q has been proven, they argue the timing and structure of the deals warrant deeper scrutiny. It's the most dumbest thing I've ever heard from essentially Democrats, and that's saying a lot, because Elizabeth Warren does tend to say the most dumbest pretty much ever. The letter also highlights the role essentially of David Sachs, the administration's so-called AI and crypto Caesar, who joined chip discussions despite colleagues' warnings about potential conflicts. The investigation request builds on the prior inquiry from September 17th, when Warren and other Democrats also pressed Sachs about the limits of his temporary appointments. It also follows earlier action back in May, when Warren and Representatives Maxine Waters sought Securities and Exchange Commission records on World Liberty Financial. So it seems like the Democratic Party is not giving up. Well, mainly Senator Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, is not giving up going after Trump. I've said this before and I'll say it again. When Trump wins, we win. I'll be very honest. When Elizabeth Warren, the most simple and most basic example I could possibly give is this. When Senator Elizabeth Warren gets inside information and her portfolio grows and beats hedge funds, she's the only one that makes money from that. Nobody else does. But when Trump essentially passes crypto legislations for us, we make money. When Trump brings in crypto innovation inside the United States, we make money. He also makes money, no doubt about it. When crypto legislation is passed, Trump makes money, his family makes money, he's a businessman. But we also make money. When innovation happens inside the United States, he wins, but so do we. And that's the difference between Elizabeth Warren and Trump. Yes, Trump is benefiting. He's making millions to billions because of his crypto-affiliated, essentially, his World Liberty Financial project, all the investments he's getting from around the world. But when he wins, we also win. But when Elizabeth Warren gets inside information on a particular stock and her portfolio goes climbing and skyrocketing, beating hedge funds, she's the only one winning. We don't win. So that's the most basic example I could give when it comes to Democrats, or essentially in this case, Democrats and Republicans, but in this case, Trump and Elizabeth Warren. There's no comparison, because when Trump wins, we win. When Elizabeth Warren wins, nobody else wins, just her. Now, Australia is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Australia to exempt low-risk crypto platforms from licensing rules. Before we talk about that, let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you have any questions, go for inside the comment section. More than happy to help you out. Let's see where we're at. Good evening, Miles. Sorry I'm late. Had to work late. No problem, Mike. Good to see you, brother. How you doing? Hi, Miles CMF. Stormy, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been, Stormy? Hi, Miles CMF. Peg, good to see you as well. How you doing? Thanks, Miles. Got to move. Have a good night. We'll check the live later. Let's go, D. No problem. Good to see you, brother. Hello to everyone in the CMF. Let's go, Mike. Why don't Trump get Elizabeth's finances investigated so she can go prison and get out of his hair? I agree. I'll be the first one to sign that petition. The moment Trump decides to investigate Pocahontas, I'll be the first one to sign that petition. I'm not an American citizen, but trust me, I'll be if I could, I will be the first one to sign that petition. Now, Australia, to exempt low-risk crypto platforms from licensing rules. Australia is starting to make some movements inside the crypto space, which is good to see. Australia is moving essentially to tighten the oversight of crypto industries, with the Albanese essentially government releasing draft legislations that would extend existing finance sector laws to digital assets and service providers. The law introduced by the essentially Assistant Treasury, Daniel, at the crypto conference essentially today is described as the cornerstone of our digital asset roadmap. It's great that Australia is taking these steps, honestly, because they were far behind, same as the UK was. And not sure about the movements so far, because trying to extend the existing laws is a bit odd, because they need to come out with new ones. The same thing Gary Gensler was doing as well, trying to embed the existing laws that's already inside the financial sector by just adding the crypto space. Currently, crypto exchanges need only register with the ASTRIC, essentially the Financial Intelligence Agency responsible for anti-money laundering oversights. He said that the proposed laws creates two new financial products categories under the Corporations Act, a digital asset platform and a tokenized custody platform. Providers of these services will be required to hold an Australian Financial Services license, bringing them under the direct supervision of the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, ASAC. This is about essentially legitimizing the good actors and shutting out the bad. He told the conference it is about giving businesses certainty and consumers confidence. If passed, the law would transform Australia into one of the most strictest regulated crypto markets, aligning exchanges with the mainstream financial institutions while filtering out the non-compliant operators. I'm guessing USDT is not going to pass through in Australia by the looks of it. The draft law essentially includes specific obligations covering wrapped tokens, public token infrastructure, and staking activities. Exchanges would need to meet new standards for custody, settlement, and essentially handling of client assets, addressing risk highlighted by past failures inside the global crypto industry. Definitely Tether is not passing through this test, because Tether has in the past in the New York courts not been able to show its reserves. And that's why I had to pay a $14 million fine, if I'm not mistaken. Breaches of the new framework could carry penalties of up to 16.5 million Australian dollars, which is roughly about 10.8 million US dollars, 3 times the benefit obtained, or 10% of the annual turnover, which is greater. Low-risk platforms are exempt, these holding less than 5,000 Australian dollars or $3,300 per customer and processing under the $10 million essential Australian dollars or 6.6 million American dollars essentially annually. The Treasury said this exemption mirrors existing essentially treatments of non-cash payment facilities, ensuring small firms are not essentially overburdened. He also emphasized that the measures respond to global lessons. Failures of digital asset businesses have highlighted the consumer risk, particularly where operators pull and hold clients' assets without consent and safeguards. What he's referring to is FTX exchange. Major exchanges operating in essentially Australia largely welcomed the draft rules. The CEO essentially of Swift's, Jason, essentially said he had expected the license regime and called it a necessary step. I don't think our industry should be frightened of high standards, he said, adding that the balance between consumer protection and innovation looked reasonable. OKX Australia's CEO, also Kate, stressed that enforcement would be key. The real measures will be ensuring licensed operators aren't undercutted by unregulated players. Crypto.com also weighed on this as well. Crypto.com's Australia general manager echoed this sentiment, calling the framework a long overdue and praising its efforts to protect consumers without the excessive and red tapes. essentially Kraken Exchange Australia Managing Director Jonathan welcomed the clarity for investors and institutions, but warned against the one-size-fits-all approach that could be a disadvantage to smaller innovators. And industry leaders said the proposal avoided early suggestions, such as requiring exchanges to hold a full market operating license, which could have driven businesses offshore. Australian exchanges backed the move, seeing the licensing as a way to legitimize the market space. The challenge will be to enforce it and ensure flexibility for essentially smaller firms, and the draft law has been open for consultation, with the Treasury accepting feedback until October 24th. So Australia is actually making movements to essentially open its market space, which is brilliant because it's going to be adding liquidity towards the market space, not overnight, but over time. Australia's liquidity is going to be pouring inside the crypto market space. So far, a few crypto exchanges, big ones to be fairly honest, Kraken, Crypto.com, OKX Exchange, and so on, they've all come out and backed the idea that finally Australia is taking steps in the right direction. Now, moving on to the elephant in the room, the news that a lot of people have been waiting for, and something that I said was going to happen 3 years ago. 3 years ago on this live, during the TikTok days, the CMF live, I said to everybody that if you want to see where your country is headed, look at China. I said CBDC, social credit systems, everything China has implemented regarding censorship or everything to do with that matter is going to be in your own jurisdictions. And if you listened to me 3 years ago, now you're very well prepared for that digital future. The people who didn't listen to me or didn't know me are in panic mode right now in the UK. Some people in the UK are saying, don't sign up for it regarding digital IDs. Don't sign up for it in any sort of a matter. We're going to not me, just want to point this out. People are saying, essentially, that they're going to be protesting against digital IDs in the UK. They're going to go against the idea of digital IDs in the UK. I just want to point this out, that I said, essentially, a long time ago, also, that protesting achieves nothing. Nothing really is achieved by protesting. The French, as I said previously, are number one at protesting. The French will protest about anything, literally anything. And France is as worse as it is just like everywhere else in the world. Protesting achieves nothing. Nothing happens at the end. The plan still moves forward. And people need to understand that digital IDs didn't just randomly pop onto Keir Starmer's table to introduce it in the UK. Digital IDs is something that's been essentially talked about and tested out before COVID. Before COVID, as I explained a long time ago, the World Bank did testings on blockchain, and it was successful. After that, we had COVID. The reason why we had COVID is not because essentially the scenario of people thinking they have some internal disease or about to pass out. The reasoning essentially was that they needed something for get people to move away from cash. And what I mean by that is because they said it on the World Economic Forum. In the World Economic Forum, they said they needed something to make people move away from cash. So they said the idea of cash carries germs fits perfectly. So don't you think it was ironic that somehow a disease breakout happens and then the banks start closing? What does a disease breakout have to do with a bank closing their branches? What does a disease breakout have to do with ATM cash points disappearing? What does a disease breakout have to do with the idea of nobody around you wants to accept cash anymore? Because they went with the idea of cash carries germs. But why did the banks close down? There's no need for banks to be closing down their branches during a disease breakout. Makes no sense. So everything that you're seeing happening isn't something that just, happen all of a sudden. It's been in the plans. It's been in the works to be happening going ahead. They pretty much have a 1,000-year-old step-by-step plan of how they're going to be ruling the world. And it all started right before COVID. To be fairly actually honest, 1998, there was a document from the World Bank that said e-cash money 1, e-cash money 2, where they talked about the idea of digital payments, to be fairly honest. Also, a lot of people are now coming out saying that they want to move to Dubai. People are saying, I'm moving to Dubai. I'm moving to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Thailand, America, whatever. Doesn't really matter where you move to. digital ID is essentially for the entire world. So no matter where you move to, digital IDs are going to be happening. So the idea isn't to go against it because it's a losing battle. If you try to waste your time protesting about something that's going to be happening, whether you like it or not, because just the world we live in, you're going to be wasting your own time and your family's time. The only thing you could do is prepare. Some might say that's cowardly. You're being a coward for telling people, you shouldn't be standing up to digital IDs. But people need to understand the bigger picture. There's no stopping it. If you were able to stop anything, this world is the way it is because protesting, going against the system doesn't work. It never has, because we're not unified, unfortunately. If we were, sure, we could pretty much stop any law and we could be the ones in charge, not the ones we vote for. But we're not. So it's either you prepare yourself for a digital future, or you can waste time protesting, holding, colorful, essentially posters and banners as if that will do anything or achieve anything. The only thing you're doing is wasting your own time and your family's time. And then later on, you're going to be trapped in a CBDC in a 15-minute city, where if you try to go beyond your 15-minute city, your money doesn't work. So honestly, there are only two things you can do. Either you can, join the morons who are going to be shouting and screaming, or you could just prepare for a CBDC world, for a digital world that's heading your way. Preparing would set you forward. Protesting will set you back. And here is essentially what they're discussing right now in the UK. And it tells you how close we are to a digital world. I said all these things are going to be happening. And people should have realized this was happening a long time ago. During COVID, they were also putting up, 5G towers everywhere. They weren't putting it up because for better internet connection. They're putting it up because for a CBDC world, a digital world needs that sort of connection, not because your smartphones need better connection. So Starmer to unveil plans for a digital ID card to crack down on illegal immigration is what they're using as the scenario. A long time ago, we also said that they need to introduce a problem and then a solution. They introduced the problem by opening the floodgates of immigration. And their solution, we can protect you by giving you a digital ID. And people are saying, well, I already have a passport and a national insurance ID and a driving license. Why do I need digital ID? It's a good question, but they don't care. And that's your answer. Every adult in Britain will require a digital ID under plans to tackle illegal immigration, is the news that came out today. Sky News essentially understands that Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is about to be announcing his backing for this scheme in speech as early as Friday. Politics Live, essentially, Andy says Labour MPs want him to out Starmer. To be fairly honest, there are politicians also coming out now and saying they don't want digital IDs in the UK because it tramples on people's privacy. Now, you might be thinking, wow, great, we have politicians on our side. What does this mean? Can politicians stop Keir Starmer? Not really. The reason why the politicians are coming out, they don't care about your privacy. Politicians couldn't care less about your privacy. They care about their own privacy because even them, they also have to go essentially onto digital IDs, which means their privacy is also going to be impacted as well. They're doing it for their own reasonings, not for yours, because they couldn't care less about you. But are they going to win? No. Because Keir Starmer is not even the one running the show either. The so-called Brit card, they're calling it Brit card and Brit wallet, would verify citizens' right to live and work in the UK. A lot of people would have said that's basically what a British passport is. It is hoped, essentially, the plans will require anyone starting a new job or even renting a home to show the card on the smartphone app, which would then be checked against the central database of these entitled to work and live. It is hoped that this would reduce the attraction of essentially working in UK illegally, essentially, and including for delivery companies. They're saying because Just Eat and Uber Eats has too many illegal immigrant drivers, you need a digital ID. At the moment, workers have to show at least one form of physical ID in the form of documents. But there are concerns within the government that those can be faked. In other words, a British passport can be faked, a driver license can be faked, and a national insurance can also be faked. But they all have unique codes. So if you type in the unique ID number, it will verify if it's real. The excuses they're coming up with are moronic, to be fairly honest. But again, no one's going to be able to stop it. French President Emmanuel Macron decided to weigh in on the matter and has repeatedly warned that the lack of ID cards in the UK acts as a major pull factor for channel crossings, as migrants feel they are able to find work in the UK. Emmanuel Macron coming out saying Keir Starmer is doing a brilliant job introducing digital IDs because it will stop the migrants from getting jobs. The plan represents a shift in the government's position, as last year ministers rolled out the idea following intervention from Sir Tony Blair just days after Labour won the general election. The former Labour minister has long been advocate of ID cards and took steps to introduce a system that will begin as a voluntarily and could later become compulsory while in office. The rollout was scrapped after Labour was ejected from power in 2010, having been opposed by the Liberal Democrats and the Tories at the time. The reason why the Tories and Liberal Democrats rejected the idea essentially back then was because, well, they're also essentially, it's because of their own privacy. The Tories and the Liberal Democrats stole so much tax-paying money. Of course, they didn't want digital IDs tracking their every footsteps. The UK has only previously had mandatory ID cards during war times, to be fairly honest, with essentially the last trenches scrapped in 1952. The idea has long been opposed by civil liberty and privacy groups in the UK, as it should be. Are they going to win? No. Sir Keir is essentially said to have shared their concerns, but come around to the idea aimed at record high levels of small boat crossings, which he could have stopped, to be fairly honest. Keir Starmer could have stopped the boats, but he lets them in willingly. Labour and a report by the Tony Blair Institute published on Wednesday said that digital IDs can help close loopholes that are trafficking gangs and essentially employers currently exploiting members or reducing pull factors, driving illegal immigration to Britain and restoring control over borders. Labour Together and essentially the Starmer-backed think tank published a report in June which said digital IDs could play a role in the right to work, the right to rent, supporting better enforcement of migration rules. I just want to add a few more to essentially what Keir Starmer said. So regarding the Labour reports that came out and Keir Starmer backed it, he said the digital IDs is essentially could play a role in the right to work. So if you want to work, you got to have a digital ID. The right to rent. If you want to rent a property, you got a digital ID. I'll add a few more so you can have a better idea of what's really coming ahead. And by the way, if you're thinking, well, this is only in the UK, not really. Every country is going to have a similar platform. And this one is in the West. So if you live in the West, now you have a better idea of where your country is also headed. So I'm going to add a few more because there's a lot more to add. But it's not just about the right to work. You need the digital ID, or the right to rent, the right to buy a house, the right to own a car, the right to travel, the right to what you say, the right to essentially where you can go, the right to where you can eat. Everything that you do on a normal basis would become a right, but it would only become a right if you have a digital ID, so they can track every single footstep. There'll be a certain point where, the scenario of a social credit system wouldn't be so absurd. Now, here is of how the digital IDs will work right off the bat. There is no unique regime for identity cards, but decisions the government would have to make include essentially who is required to register, how much information they should hold, and whether physical forms of ID should also be made available. Pat McFadden, essentially now the Work for and Pension Security, started a cross-government unit to look at how it could work while he was in charge of the Cabinet Office. He visited Estonia last month before the Cabinet reshuffle, where he said the Baltic countries' model could be used as an example, In Estonia, for example, citizens are given a unique number at birth, which essentially they use to register marriages, access bank accounts, vote, book GP appointments, file their tax returns, and even collect supermarket loyalty points, among hundreds of other services. Mr. McFadden told the Times digital IDs could be applied to the immigration system, to the benefit system, to the number of areas. Number of areas. Your 15-minute cities. And a lot of people thought, they're going to put essentially barriers up or so on for 15-minute cities. Not really. If you just go beyond your 15-minute city, your money doesn't work. It's digital. Same thing that Thai Party did, where they said, if you vote for us, you get 10,000 bahts. But there's always a catch. There's no such thing as free money, which meant the people that did vote for that Thai Party received their 10,000 CBDC in bahts, but it only worked 5 kilometers from their house. The money just didn't work beyond 5 kilometers. Checkpoint society, they're calling it. Checkpoint society. The government's plan will be subject to a consultation and would require legislation to be passed before being rolled out. Labour MPs on the left of the party have already hit out the idea. Nadia labelled the policy decisive orientation and nonsense, adding, if we're going to reheat the Blair-era policies, can we please focus on lifting children out of poverty? I agree 100% with that statement. Reform UK and the Tories are also against the proposal, arguing it will stop the small boat crossings. Reform is saying, even if we do have digital IDs, who's to say the boat crossings will stop? Because they really won't. The Lib Dems, meanwhile, said they were essentially against the principle of people being forced to turn over their private data just to go about their daily lives. The civil liberty group Big Brother Watch said plans for a mandatory digital ID would make us all reliant on digital passes to go about our daily lives, turning us into a checkpoint society. A checkpoint society is what we're heading towards. That is essentially very un-British, they're calling it. So, this is why I said, essentially 3 years ago, everybody who listened to me 3 years ago, genuinely, everybody who listened to me, who knew me 3 years ago on the TikTok lives we used to do, now we only do TikTok, essentially now we only do lives on YouTube and X, Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. Well, 3 years ago when we're doing TikTok lives, I explained to everyone what's going to be happening, and it happened like a domino effect. And I also said, if you will be prepared for a digital world, where would you rather be? Standing at the back of the line, holding a placard with some colorful writing on it and some slogans, going against essentially the world of a digital ID, or standing in front of the line, preparing for a digital world, saving yourself and your family. Because as I said, everybody will have digital IDs, but it's about what you also have on the side. So if you only have CBDCs, your future is pretty much done for. But if you have alternatives, XRP, XLM, XDC, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, whatever you may have in terms of legitimate crypto assets, if they tell you to jump, you don't have to say how high, because you can say, well, I still have, some XRP, some XLM, some XDC, some HBAR, Cardano, Solana, Bitcoin, Ethereum to rely on. But if you don't have any of those things and all you have is CBDCs, then you're pretty much done for. Because you wasted your time holding placards, trying to go against the system that's been laid out pretty much 100 years ago for us. And as I said, if you're living in any other Western country, what's happening in the UK is going to be what's happening in your countries as well. As much as Trump might be against the idea of digital IDs, it's still going to be happening inside the United States. Canada is also going to be having a conversation with Keir Starmer. Canada's pretty much next to follow the UK in this essentially digital ID world where everything you do will be tracked online. As I said before, and I'll say it again, you want to prepare for a CBDC world? XRP is your savior in a CBDC world. People can criticize XRP, they can criticize Ripple as much as they want. XRP, in my opinion, based on all the data, based on the facts, based on the contracts, the licensings, and how far they've went, XRP will save your life in a digital world. Some people will say XRP will make you a millionaire. XRP will make you a billionaire, a trillionaire. Yeah. But my quote for XRP is XRP will save your life in a digital world. It will literally save your life in a CBDC, social credit system, digital ID world. Yes, millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire, very important. But what's also more important is your life. It will save your life. Now, hashtags is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. In terms of the crypto ETFs, but before we talk about that, let's go inside the comment section first. Let's see what's happening there. See what's happening there, and we'll go straight into the next news, which is XRP related, ironically, as we're talking about XRP. Let's see where we're at. We were at here. Good evening, CMF. Denise, good to see you. How you doing? Good evening, Miles and CMF. Sorry, I'm late. SB, good to see you. How you doing? How's things, SB? Johnny, Miles, 1,000 XRP. Good. That's a good amount to have. I love your new Coin Move mug. Thank you so much, Peg. Not new, but thank you so much. I was there, Miles. I remember you saying that. Let's go, Mike. Facts. Someone mentioned protesting. Let's go, Ray. I was not aware of this, but my cousin told me a few days back, Iraq now have a 4-in-1 digital ID, 1 passport, 2 IDs, cards, 3 birth certificates, and 4, I forgot, but some form of ID. Come on, thank you for the update. I don't know about that either. How would anything work with 5 kilometers from the house? What if you work away, you starve? Well, everybody's going to have a carbon footprint. So if you produce too much carbon footprint, or you essentially, if you run out of your carbon footprint credits, then you would have to wait or purchase more carbon footprint credits. It's going to get to a stage where you're going to be paying for oxygen. How would anything, honestly, this is why when people say to me, you know, for example, are you going to be having kids, you know, for example, in the future? I say no. I say to every one of them, no. You know, people ask, you know, my friends around me who, some are married, some are not married, but have kids. And when they say to me, you know, when are you going to be settling down and having kids and stuff? I say never. Because I know where the future is headed, and what's the point? I'd rather just enjoy what I have left in terms of my crypto balance and so on, and you know, just enjoy what I have left. How would anything work here? So you can't travel anyway. You can. Everybody has carbon footprint credits. Once that runs out is when you have to buy more. I remember you saying that back on TikTok. Let's go, Jason. Well, if you don't care, you will be on CBDCs. If you're intelligent within the system, you can innovate and escape. Escape? No. Innovate? Yes. Nobody can escape the system whatsoever. The idea of escaping the matrix is the dumbest thing anybody could possibly say. And I know somebody like Andrew Tate will always come out and say, you know, that he claims that he has escaped the matrix. Nobody escapes the matrix. Full stop. The money that he has, the millions of pounds, euros, and dollars that he has, and he says he has hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's just say he does. Let's just say somebody like him has hundreds of millions of dollars. And he tells the whole world he's escaped the matrix because he has $100 million in his bank. Who printed the money? You see, the issue is people don't realize the bigger picture. You're going up against the people you're bragging about the $100 million. They created that $100 million that you're holding in your wallets, or essentially in your bank accounts. Nobody escapes the matrix. We're all players on a chessboard. And to give you what I mean is, every single one of us are like players on a chessboard. Some of us soldiers, some of the horse, some of them essentially bridge and so on. They created the chessboard for us. So how are you going to escape the matrix? If they created the chessboard and you're the players on the chessboard, how are you planning on escaping? So there's no escaping the matrix. Even as people like him would say, oh, I've escaped the matrix because I have $100 million. Andrew Tate could have $1 trillion in his bank account. He still hasn't escaped the matrix. Because who printed that 1 trillion for him? The people that created the board. So you're going up against the people that created the entire thing around you, saying I've escaped it, but you're using what they created. You haven't escaped anything. You're still a part of the game. So there's no escaping whatsoever. But there is a way of you doing better in this game, which is XRP and I don't know how more convincingly to tell people how XRP could honestly save your life in a digital world. And I'm not saying this to boost my own bags. Unless you're watching this live right now and have $1 trillion essentially to invest into XRP, then sure. But the people that I talk to have £100, £200, £1,000, £10,000, £100,000, £500,000, whatever. That won't move the price of XRP, but it would save your life. Now, this is why I say XRP is crucial to your livelihood. And everybody who listened to me 3 years ago has an extremely bright future ahead of themselves. Miles, will XRP be taken? Okay, let's see. Miles, will XRP be taken of because, for example, it shoots to $100, everyone will start buying. People will start buying, yes. And Iraq call it complete card instead of ID card. The same way, Kamal, good point. The same way, essentially, in Bahrain, the Central Bank of Bahrain said, why do we call it digital money, CBDC money? Why not just call it money? Because that's what it is. Rebranding helps because people weren't attended with CBDCs and social credit systems and so on, because now it's just called money. Rebranding helps. What do you mean about not having kids? There's no point, I'll be honest. Those people in Alaska aren't in the matrix, or those who live in vans, they are. They're all part of the system. Those people that are also living in vans, they need to work for a living somehow, make some money for a living. Again, they're on the same chessboard. Nobody escapes the matrix. They created the board. They can take him anytime he's full of BS. Okay, bring that to one side. Now, hashtags. Hashtags crypto index ETF boosts new altcoin exposure for greater gains. In a significant development for the cryptocurrency investment landscape, Hashtags, if you've seen the news on X today, essentially, has been granted a green light for the ETF to include the popular digital assets, XRP, Solana, XLM, and so on. That is incredible news, especially for XLM, because we still haven't got anything for it, and this is brilliant. More incredible news for XRP, to be fairly honest. And it does showing now that the SEC is slowly opening their doors to more ETFs, which is brilliant. Hashtags has expanded its crypto essentially index US ETF to include these popular digital assets. This move comes after the SEC's recent rule changing, allowing for a more streamlined process for digital assets on the exchanges, potentially accelerating the adoption of more diverse crypto assets within traditional financial products. Hashtags ETFs now include XRP, Solana, and XLM alongside Bitcoin and Ethereum. The ETF is listed on Nasdaq under the ticker NCIQ, offering investors exposures to 5 leading cryptocurrencies. The SEC's approval of generic listing standards paves the way for quicker crypto ETF approvals in the future. New standards require cryptos to be classified as commodities or future regulated future contracts. Industry experts anticipate a surge in crypto ETF filings and increased integration between traditional and digital asset markets. Hashtags crypto index US ETF trading on the Nasdaq under the symbol NCQ has expanded to these essential assets, and it's going to be remaining just with these assets because that's the only ones that's filed in. And the digital assets following this approval of the generic listing standards earlier this year. These standards are designed to facilitate a broader adoption of cryptocurrencies by institutional investors and retail consumers through familiar financial structures. Honestly, brilliant news coming out, and it really does show that the SEC is, moving in the right direction, approving these ETFs. SEC Chairman, essentially, Paul Atkins, has championed the efforts to streamline cryptocurrency ETFs approvals, including the proposed innovations and exemptions, a regulatory sandbox allowing blockchain projects to experiment freely without fear of imminent sanctions. This shift is essentially in policy reflects a broader move by regulators to modernize the US financial systems to better accommodate digital finance and blockchain innovation. Also, Ripple's CEO praises XRP community in his latest message. So not only was the Ripple Swell event going on, but we also had the Ripple essentially event happening in South Korea. So organizers reported that more than 3,000 participants from over 40 countries attended The conference, united by a shared mission to advance the future of XRP and the XRP Ledger ecosystem in South Korea. The team also showcased video highlights that captured the large turnouts and key movements, such as the fireside chats and the keynote speeches from the top crypto stakeholders, including Ripple President Monica Long, reacting essentially to Brad Garlinghouse essentially comment to the global XRP community for their unwavering commitment and their ability to show their force. This was evident essentially in a strong turnout at the recent essentially concluded XRP Seoul 2025 event. Meanwhile, he also congratulated the XRP Seoul team on the success of the inaugural conference, while noting Ripple's excitement for the future gatherings ahead. This is not the first time Ripple's CEO has openly praised the XRP community following the XRP Las Vegas conference earlier this year, which saw his highest attendance since inception. Brad also noted that the steady growth reflects the strength and the essentially dedication of the XRP community behind him. In 2023, he also expressed gratitude towards the XRP community for supporting Ripple throughout its legal tussle against the SEC. With attorney John Deaton essentially involved in the case, the XRP community members submitted 3,000 affidavits that essentially helped the XRP case. Besides the offerings of a network and platform for community members, XRP Seoul 2025 also sparked major developments for the ecosystem. At the event, Georgios, essentially co-founder of Axelar Network, announced the launch of the first liquid staking token MXRP on the XRP ledger with the target annual return of 10%. In addition, Ripple also unveiled a major streak move through its senior director of ecosystem growth, Christina Chan. According to Chan, Ripple intends to set up a new Asia Pacific hub in South Korea to strengthen its leadership in the region. So there's two major factors right there. Axelar regarding the staking of XRP that was announced at the Seoul 2025 essentially Ripple event, and also a new essentially hub is going to be set up in South Korea for the Asian market space of Ripple and the XRP Ledger ecosystem. Just want to say before we do go that day by day we are getting closer. We're getting closer to essentially this digital world that we're heading into. And we're going to be hearing more news articles coming out. Canada's probably going to be next because he's having a conversation with essentially Marcus, going to be having a conversation with essentially Kirstama. Day by day, we're getting closer and closer to this CBDC, social credit system, carbon footprint, 15-minute city world. And whoever listened to me and whoever is still listening to me, your future is going to look exceptionally bright. And whoever doesn't listen to me, and doesn't know about me, well, good luck, because your future is not going to be very bright. Also want to say, just one last time, XRP, if you own it, brilliant. If you don't, look into it. You don't understand how much this particular asset can change your life. And people around you regarding crypto influencers, family members, work colleagues, cousins, whoever it may be, it tells you crypto is bad or XRP is bad or has no future. They don't know what they're talking about. This is not financial advice whatsoever. But it is the only asset, in my own opinion, regarding what I've read since day one until now, that is going to be changing your life. And if you're seeing the markets go up and down right now, if you're seeing the markets essentially go down and you're getting frustrated at the market space in any sort of a way, don't. Because think ahead. And ahead is the rest of the ETFs coming out, the legislations coming out. And with that, it means liquidity and utility. So think about every time the markets go down inside a crypto space, just think ahead. Think utility. Think essentially liquidity. Think regulations. Think ETFs. Every time the market goes down, because that's what's coming ahead. Short term, market will be all over the place because the house needs to win. Future-wise, you're sorted. And that's all that matters. What do you mean, bright miles? It means a brilliant future ahead of yourself. If you let frustration get to you, the house wins. Don't let the house distract you with frustration. If you let the house distract you with frustration, by the house, I mean who you're going up against in general, in terms of the exchanges. If you let the house win, and you let frustration get to you, and you forget about the bigger picture, there's no coming back from that. So don't let the house win. Every time the market goes down, liquidity. Think about that. Every time the market goes down, Think about regulations. Every time the market goes down, think about the rest of the ETFs. And every time the market goes down, think about how you're not going to be trapped in CBDCs because you're holding XRP. On that note, we have also reached the endings of tonight's live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, this is the CMF Live. It stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. London time onwards. And this was episode 380 of the CMF Live. The disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. So let's go start a comment section. Obviously, before we do leave, those people, no, over here. No point too expensive. Thank you for a great live and all the news. Good night. See you tomorrow. Let's go, JP. See you tomorrow, brother. Miles, before you go, is 8K XRP good? 8K XRP is great. Amazing message, Miles. It's a scary world coming, but your words are comforting, knowing our future will be better holding XRP. Thank you, brother. Let's go, Robertus. No problem. Anytime. Night, Miles, the CMF. Very interesting live today. See you tomorrow. Joe, let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Great job tonight, Miles. Let's go, Scott. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. My mates who own nothing, I've told them to learn high-value skills they can exchange for crypto. I'm glad some own like 90 XRP. That's good that they still own essentially, they own at least 90 XRP. Thanks, Miles. 19 days CMF. Let's go, Shelly. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Miles, the house has always oppressed me. Night, Miles, the CMF. Pablo, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Good night, Miles, and CMF. Excellent news. See you tomorrow. For everybody, see you tomorrow, same time as usual. Thank you, Miles. Night all, Stormy. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. I'm an action. Woodhouse, you're okay, brother. Don't worry about it. Outstanding live. Share, like, and leave a comment for support. Much love. Take care all. Let's go. Great live, Miles, as usual. Good night, Miles, and CMF. Let's go, Jason. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Thanks, Miles, and have a good night. Peg, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Good night, everyone. Great live, as always. Let's go, Denise. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Good night, Miles and CMF. See you tomorrow from See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Good night, Miles and CMF. See you tomorrow. Mike, see you tomorrow, same time as usual. I just brought in for the 6th time this month. September has been the best month in 2025 for me personally. Let's go, come on. Good night, Miles. Great live show as usual. Good night, Miles. See you tomorrow. Carl, see you tomorrow. And Kamal, see you tomorrow, but at the same time as usual as well. And Callie, see you tomorrow, same time as usual. And bye, Miles. God bless. Woodhouse, let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. I will see. Great live show tonight, Miles. As always, thank you very much and have a good night. Let's go, Carlos. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Night all. Let's go, Susie. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. I will see everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you are around the world, CMF members. Like, comment, share, retweet if you already haven't. If you have, honestly, thank you so much to every single one of you. And if you followed and subscribed to me during this live, thank you so much and welcome to the CMF, where if you tune into these live shows, it can pretty much save your life. I'll see everybody tomorrow, same time as usual. Honestly, everybody have a great day or a good night. Love you all. See you tomorrow. 10 p.m., long time onwards. I dollar cost average twice this week. Let's go, Scott. See you tomorrow, but same time as usual. Love you all. See you tomorrow.